This weekend marks 34 years since activist Nelson Mandela was released from prison in South Africa after spending 27 years behind bars for his efforts to end apartheid. He became a free man on February 11th, 1990. Mandela's life before, during, and after his incarceration are now chronicled with gorgeous pictures in a new coffee table book put together by his daughter. It's called Mandela in honor of an extraordinary life. And joining us now live from Johannesburg, South Africa, is his daughter, Dr. Makaziwe Mandela. Dr. Mandela, thank you for being with me.
It's a pleasure.
So your father, who you call Tata in the Xhosa language, emphasized that in his life he was shaped by the cultural traditions, values of his ancestors and roots in South Africa. Talk about the importance of lineage to your father.
I think for my father, lineage was very, very important because, you know, he believed very strongly that it is through your family, your kinship relationships that form you into the person that you become and shape your vision and your outlook in life. And so my father believed very much in the issue of lineage, of kinship, of tradition and customs.
One of the things he's quoted so often in so many ways. One time he said, what counts in life is not the mere fact that we have lived, it's what difference we have made to the lives of others that will determine the significance of the life we lead. Is that a philosophy you've lived by?
Oh, yes, because I think that we come from ancestors who were very hospitable, who were caring, who were nurturing. And so it is inbred in us, in the family, to care for each other. And there is a proverb in the African language called Ubuntu, which means you are because of the community in which you live, and that it takes a village to bring up a child.
In chapter 4, it's called 27 Years. And that, of course, is the period of time your father was imprisoned. He was prisoner number 46664 because he was the 466th person incarcerated there, released, as we said, on February 11th, 1990. I've been to Robben Island, and in his cell when I was in South Africa, I still carry with me this rock that I took from the area around a tree that he used to write at. And it gives me motivation and thought when I think of him and think of all he did. You wrote that when he went back to Robben Island and to his cell 2 months after his release, he didn't feel like a free man. When he left, he didn't feel like a free man. He said there's no freedom when there's only freedom for one and not freedom for all. Talk about that.
I think while my father was fighting for freedom of Black people in South Africa, he also saw that poverty was like being in prison. So as long as the majority of Black people were languishing in poverty, unemployment, he didn't feel that we were free at all. But also that I was keenly aware that there were many people around the world that were still in prison, incarcerated, discriminated against. And he believed, even if we could be free in South Africa, if the rest of the world was not free, we could not enjoy the freedoms that we so desire.
So for us, he's larger than life figure. You write in the book, you didn't get to see him much growing up. He was married to politics, but you did share meals with him. Talk a little bit about the personal side of Nelson Mandela, the part maybe we didn't see.
I think that first I would say Tata loved his mother. He was a mama's boy, but also he actually loved gossip, because if we were sitting around the table and everybody was talking at the same time, he would tell us to shut up, people must speak, one person must speak, because he wanted to know all the gossip that was happening all around him. But also he was a person who liked to tell a lot of folk stories, especially to his grandchildren. And, he had a very wicked sense of humor. That was Tata.
Well, he was also a very practical man. And by the way, I don't know if you see these, but we're showing pictures now of him with Oprah Winfrey and all sorts of famous people. But he was filmed with President Obama, President George W. Bush, Queen Elizabeth, the Pope, on and on. But he also met with those that we in this country would have considered enemies, with Muammar Gaddafi of Libya, with Fidel Castro of Cuba. And your father asked the question, why should their enemies be our enemies? He befriended many that others would consider bad. Talk about what his philosophy was in working with people who we consider good or bad.
Well, I think my father felt strongly that those people who were with them in the trenches, they wouldn't abandon because they were just free, and no country had the right to dictate to them who their friends were. And my father spoke very strongly about this, and he believed Muammar Gaddafi, Fidel Castro, Yasser Arafat were their friends when they were in the trenches and supported the ANC when the ANC was a pariah to the world, and they couldn't abandon them.
When it did come to family, we talked a little bit about that, but he said that family is not about the number of people who sit at the dinner table. Rather, it's the memories you share, the commitment of time, the caring and love and hopes that you have as individuals for a family unit. How much did family mean to him? And I mean that in terms of the quality of time he could spend with you, knowing that he had such a higher, well, I shouldn't say higher mission, but a mission in life, which is to free all the people of South Africa.
Look, I think for Dada, he treasured the little moments. I mean, he didn't have a lot of time for his own children. By the time Dada was released out of jail, we were grown women, we were married, we had our own children. But my dad enjoyed very much the company of his children. But he also enjoyed the company of ordinary people from the village, because they took him to the time when he was growing up in the Transkei in Kunu, and so he loved just ordinary people. Dada was very authentic to himself, and he loved people from deep within his heart. When he looked at you and shook your hand, he really meant it from deep inside his soul. That's the kind of person Dada was.
And finally, Doctor, your father's legacy can be summed up in many quotes in the book, but at one point he says, courage is not the absence of fear, it's the triumph over it. Your thought about that?
Yes, because I mean, one of the things that still amazes me even today is that my dad came out of 27 years of incarceration without any bitterness and anger, and had and learned basically to forgive those who were taking him away from his family, who were persecuted and oppressed them. But he realized that if he continued with bitterness and anger, he would still be in prison. And so that's why he said it takes courage to forgive, and that forgiveness is actually a freeing of oneself.
Beautiful words and a beautiful book. The book is called Mandela in Honor of an Extraordinary Life. For more information, check out RizzoliUSA.com.